this is Judy from Bungalow Quilting and Yarn, and today we're going to talk about making a pillow flap with a zipper in it, so that when you make a pillow, you don't have to have it be on there permanently. You can put a zipper on the back of your pillow so that you can take it off and wash it. So that's kind of daunting to some people to put in a zipper, but we're going to show you how to do it so that it's really, really easy and it looks so professional and neat and tidy. So what you need for that is a pillow form, of course, and your pillow form, the size of it is going to determine the size of your fabric that you're going to cut. We cut a nice big large one here. It's 20 inches. This would probably accommodate an 18-inch pillow. But if you have a smaller size pillow, obviously you're going to cut this smaller. It just depends on how big you're going to make your seam allowances with your pillow. So here's the back of our pillow. Here is the front of our pillow. So these squares are cut the exact same size. And then you need a nylon zipper, one that you can cut with the scissors and one that you can sew over without breaking a needle. Okay, and it has to be, of course, long enough to cover that whole size of your pillow. And then we have here the width of the pillow, a strip that's 5 inches by width of pillow. All right, so you can see that on the other side we've interfaced it because I love to interface everything. It just gives it a nice firm feel. It makes the fabric more substantial and it makes it a ton easier to work with. And what we have here in the shop is an iron-on. It's like a muslin. And it's not the non-woven, cheap, papery kind of interfacing. You don't want to use that. You want to use something nice and substantial, and we do have that here at the shop. So now we're going to talk about how we're going to place the zipper and where we're going to place it. You could probably put it dead center, but I don't know, that just probably wouldn't look right. So I think I'm going to divide this into thirds. So this is 20 inches. 21 inches, a third of that would be 7. So somewhere between the 6 and the 7. Doesn't have to be exact. You can decide where you want to do this. There's no rules about this. There's 6.5 inches right there. And so we're going to make it a cut there. But first, before you make that cut, make sure it's straight on this edge of your board and it's straight on this edge. So we've got a perfectly square 20-inch square. And at 6.5 inches, we're going to make our cut. So that's exactly where our zipper is going to be. All right. So now we're going to take the zipper, and the flap is going to have to cover the zipper. So in essence, what you want to do, the end result that you're going to want is something that looks like this. This is going to be like this, and then the flap is going to be covering it. So how are you going to accomplish that? We've got to figure that out. Okay. So let's think this through in terms of the order of how things are going to go. Don't let this flap confuse you and get in the way of what order you want to do this in. So if you were, let's say you were just going to do it without the flap at all, you know that you would have this side of the zipper would be sewn to this side of the fabric, so that when it was sewn down here and you opened it out, this is how it would look. But now we want to add a flap, and we want that flap to come in there and cover that zipper up. So the flap has to be right between this piece of fabric and the zipper, right? So we're going to put the piece of fabric down. We're going to put the flap down onto the piece of fabric. And then our zipper goes down on top of that, but it's this side of the zipper, this half of the zipper. So we're going to put that like this. And I would actually put it maybe a 1/2 of an inch down so that when you actually make your seam allowance in here, you're not going to run into that zipper stop piece. Okay, so you can put it like about a 1/2 an inch down. So now we're going to go over to the sewing machine. We're going to pin it nice and firm, or you can hand baste. My mother would have said to hand baste. We're going to hand baste or pin this right down the side here and take it over to the sewing machine. So now we've got this pinned on here. This is pinned on in this order. The fabric right side's up, the flap, and the zipper face down. But because of the way I'm feeding this through the sewing machine, I started pinning down this way, because when we sew, we're sewing this direction into the sewing machine. So my pins, I want to be able to pull them out. So I started pinning from the end first, and then we're going to go up to the top. Now, the zipper, if you could zoom in a little bit here, the zipper automatically comes with this nice little center marking here. You see this? It's just a little, the zipper companies make the zippers so that they have a thread that's differentiated from the other threads, where you can see it as a guideline for sewing. That's a really good guideline for where you can sew. So keep your stitching on that line. So let's go over to the sewing machine. I put my zipper foot on my sewing machine already, and I'm going to move my needle over to that side. Don't forget to do that or you're going to end up with a broken needle. We've all done that more than one time. And I'm going to start sewing, and I'm going to sew right on that guideline like we talked about. You don't need to backstitch either because you're going to go across it later. So you don't need to backstitch. And I'm feeling some resistance because there's a lot of bulk under there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase my stitch length. I'm going to make my stitch length to about 3.5. Whenever you feel some resistance and you feel a little bit of bulk under your pressure foot, you can change that stitch length. It's not going to weaken the zipper or the hole or the seam. It's not going to weaken it at all. Just increase your stitch length a little bit. All right, we're going to sew all the way up to the top. When we get closer to the top, you can pull that zipper tab down and away from your stitching if you want to, if that makes it easier for you. What I'm talking about here is like doing something like this, but make sure your needle is down, needle stop down, needle into the fabric, lift up your pressure foot, and you can unzip that. There you go. And that'll make it a little bit easier for you to pass by there. All right, so we're gonna go all the way to the top. And again, I don't need to backstitch, but out of habit, I'm gonna do it anyways. Backstitch there, and clip your threads. Now you can see what it looks like. We've got our zipper on top of our flap, which is on top of our piece of pillow. And I unzipped it for ease of sewing. I'm gonna zip it back up. Look at how this looks now. So this goes like this, and you have that nice flap. See that? And then that's going to get sewn onto here. So look at how nice that's going to look. So how are we going to accomplish that last step? Well, now we know that it's going to look like this. When you look on this side, you're going to want this piece of this half of the zipper, this side of the zipper, to be sewn to this, okay? Could you sew it right down on top of there? Yeah, you could, but that wouldn't be correct. So what we're going to do is this needs to be sewn to this. So this is going to come up and over. Now we're going to sew this to this half of the zipper. See that? We're going to sew this to this half of the zipper. So we're going to pin this piece. Now there's going to be a lot of stuff you're going to have in the way here on the other side. So you have to be really careful when you're sewing to keep that pulled away so that you don't sew over it. Now Barb and I just had a little discussion, a little half argument about whether or not I needed to, because we started out with a 20-inch square. We started out with a 20-inch square here and a 20-inch square here. And I said, well, don't you need to make this slightly bigger because you're going to be sewing seams in here, you're cutting it, you're putting a zipper in there. But then when you think about it and you do the math, the zipper takes up the extra room that you would have had that allow for those seams. So did we make a seam here? Yes, we did. And it took up a 1/4 inch of this side, and it's going to take a 1/4 inch of this side. But our zipper is at least 1/2 inch wide once we get done. So actually, this can remain 20 inches, and this can remain 20 inches. Okay, so now we're going to pin this to this. And Barb was right, by the way. I was the one that insisted that it had to be the other way. She was right. Okay, so we're going to pin this to this. And I'm going to do it from this side because remember I said that you've got that nice little guideline, and I want to make sure that this is even with this side of the pillow. So all I did was flip that the other direction. And I'm going to make sure that these ends are even. And then I'm going to put my pins in all the way down. I'm going to go back over to the sewing machine. Okay, so here we are back at the sewing machine, and Barb wanted me to make sure that I re-mentioned again that these two pieces need to be even, that this needs to be even with this. But if they're not even in the end, when you get done sewing this all up, because it takes up some room, sometimes it puckers it a little or whatever, we can go back and we can lay this together with the other side, the front of our pillow. We can lay them together and trim them down to the right side, to the right size. If you started out with a 16-inch pillow form and you started cutting this out at 20, you know you're going to have enough room to trim a little bit around the edges and still have it fit in, or an 18-inch pillow. You always start out with a little bit of extra. So I'm going to put my needle down, and I'm going to pull my zipper down a little ways so that I'm away from it, working away from it. And I'm going to use, again, I'm going to use the guideline of the center of that zipper, and I'm going to try to keep this out of the way. Go right down the center of that line on the zipper. And as I'm doing this, needle stop down, I'm keeping this free, making sure that I'm keeping this free. When you pinned it, it should have been free. But just make sure you don't get stuff hung up inside or you're going to end up ripping, which you might anyways, and it's not the end of the world. Now, what I could have mentioned too, I could have mentioned that before the whole thing started, if you wanted to serge the edges of your whole pillow before you even start sewing, that's a great idea too, because when you do that, you don't have all these little edges, or zigzag, you don't have all these little pieces of thread that come popping out. So adding a nice serged finish before you even start this process would help too. I often do that when I'm sewing zippers into garments. I'll sew, or I'll serge the edge of that garment before I actually start sewing, because then it keeps all that raveling from happening. And I'm going to backstitch just out of force of habit, even though I don't have to, because I'm going to be sewing across that later. All right, so look at how nice this looks. So here we have our top part, and then our flap is in between there, and then our zipper is underneath that. Look how nice that looks. That nice little sandwich made it look like that. And then this, of course, I pulled it down. What we did, remember, we sewed this to this other half of the zipper. And that's how that looks. Now you can watch this video over and over and over again so that you make sure you get it right. That's the really nice thing about a video, is that you can keep watching it over and over again, back it up, or whatever you need to do when you're learning to do this. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to iron this. I'm going to iron it. Make sure you don't iron directly on the zipper teeth, because I can't guarantee that something's not going to melt under the iron. So we're going to iron right over the edge, right there. I know I've had buttons that have melted on me, even though you don't think it's going to, and then you're ironing a shirt, and then or a pin. I've had a pin melt, a plastic pin. So even though you think it's not going to, and it probably shouldn't, that doesn't mean it's not going to. So then we're going to iron this. We're going to iron this nice, so it's nice and flat, because what we're going to do then is we're going to top stitch. We're going to top stitch on this so that we can avoid having fabric get pinched into your zipper. You've all had jackets where your fabric has gotten pinched into your zipper, but if you top stitch, that keeps that from happening. So we're going to finish ironing it, and I want you to take a good look at what it looks like. See that? There's the flap. Where are we going to top stitch? We're going to top stitch right along here, and we're going to top stitch right along here. So we're going to go back over to the sewing machine. All right, so now we're top stitching. Could we do this without the zipper foot? Probably, but we still have some bulk over here on this side, so I'm going to leave my zipper foot on. If it doesn't work with the zipper foot, then I would take the zipper foot off. It's just a matter of preference. So I'm going to backstitch a little here and go forward, and I'm going to stay right along that edge, probably not quite 1/4 of an inch away, but a little more than 1/8. It's just a, can you see that? And I still have my stitch length pulled up a little longer. I think it looks a little nicer. And I'm applying gentle outward pressure to this so that I don't have a lip in here. Just a little gentle outward tug. Top stitch along it all the way to the end. And then we're going to top stitch the other side. Now I could start here and I would have a problem because my foot's on this side, or I could go over to this side and flip it, which is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to top stitch here. And that's going to keep this from coming up and getting caught in the zipper. Gentle pressure outward. Gentle pressure outward, pulling outward slightly. And you see how it has that extra 1/2 inch in there? That's the source of my argument with Barb. And she was right, she won. She usually does. I like to say it's because she's got so much more sewing experience than me. Okay, so here we go, all the way to the end. Now you're probably wondering, what are we gonna do about the end of that zipper that's hanging off on the end? Well, it's a nylon zipper. We don't have to worry about it. We're gonna cut it off right there. And then when we sew our pillow right sides together, we're just gonna sew right over that, okay? And so that's the beauty of having a nylon zipper. So there we have it. We've got the back of our pillow, zipper flap, completely done. I think that looks wonderful and neat and tidy. Now in summary, we're gonna show you this pillow that was done by Kim Bates that works here at Bungalow Quilting and Yarn. And she did a coordinating color. She didn't even do the same color as the pillow. She added her flap as a different color, and that adds a little design element because the front of her pillow looks like this. And so she added the fabric that she used for the state of Wisconsin, and she put it on the back. And then she put her label on there. So there's all kinds of design elements that you could add to that. Think about this. You could probably add, I don't know, some ribbon trim, which would be very, very pretty. You could even sign it if you were giving this as a gift to a bride and groom, or a gift to anybody actually. Put your signature on there. Just thought I'd show you another design idea from Bungalow Quilting and Yarn.